What's up guys, KalipezTech here, coming back at you with another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Motorola Moto G9 Power. So let's get started. So this phone has a 6.8 inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 263, an aspect ratio of 20.5 by 9, and a screen to body ratio of 83.1%. We got a hole punch here for the front facing camera, and this camera is 13 megapixels. Right now, I do have the brightness set to 100%, and despite only being 720p, I do think it looks really good. The back is made of a hard plastic material that has an interesting texture to it. Overall, I would definitely say the materials are good quality. For storage, this phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so that is really a lot. For the average user, you're probably not going to even come close to running out of space. And if you're more of a power user, if you have lots of games, shoot lots of videos, and do that sort of thing, this is especially going to be good for you because with apps getting larger and larger these days and the system taking up a lot of space itself, it's never a bad thing to have a ton of storage. And with 128 gigabytes of internal storage, that is a lot. I myself prefer to keep everything on my phone if I can and not have to deal with the microSD card. So having a larger space on the phone is definitely going to help with that. Now there's no wireless charging with this phone, but there is a fingerprint scanner on the back here, located in a super easy to reach spot. Now let's go ahead and give that a try now. There we go, one more time. And as you can see, it's really fast and responsive, no problems there. And if you're not a fan of fingerprint scanners, this phone also has face unlock, so you have both options. Now, taking a look at the rear camera setup of this phone, we do have a triple camera setup with a 64 megapixel rear camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. It's a little too bad that there's no ultra wide camera. That is one feature that I do wish this phone had. I think the ultra wide camera, with how popular it's getting and how useful it is, should be a feature that's standard on pretty much every phone. Nowadays, portrait mode for one is really standard on pretty much every smartphone you'll find these days. And I think the ultra wide camera should be the same way. There's so many different uses for it. Whereas with the macro camera this phone has, it still can be useful in certain situations, but not nearly as much so as an ultra-wide camera. So here's a photo taken with the rear camera of this phone. As you would expect with a 64 megapixel camera, this phone really does take high quality photos. I like how the colors look in this and the details are really sharp. Whether or not the quality of this photo is suitable for legit photography, I'll let you be the judge of, but I will say I personally think the camera on this phone is more than capable of taking really good pictures for stuff like social media. So if you use the camera on a more casual basis, or if you really like to get those nice crispy photos for social media, then I think this is going to be a good option. Here are a couple photos taken with the macro camera of this phone. Now, I'm not a huge macro camera user myself, but I did think that the photos taken with this macro camera did come out pretty good. I can definitely appreciate how good the focus on those fine little close-up details is on this phone. So if you do value a good macro camera, then this is definitely going to be a strength of this phone for you. As far as video goes, this phone can shoot in qualities up to 1080p in the rear camera and in the front, so nothing too special. But the quality of the videos is going to be about the quality you saw in the camera demonstration. So really, it is going to be pretty good. If you do like to shoot a lot of videos, but you don't need a high resolution like 4K, then this phone's probably still going to work out for you for that. And it is just as well that this phone can take really good photos and videos, because that stuff, especially videos, does take up a decent amount of space. And again, this phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage, so you'll be able to take pretty much all the photos and videos you want. Internally, the Motorola Moto G9 Power is getting 4 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 662 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 311 and a multi-core score of 1411. So not bad at all. It's not quite at the level where I would consider it high end, but personally from my experience, I haven't had any performance issues with this phone. If you're using your phone for more basic activities and some moderate stuff, it's gonna hold up perfectly fine. Sending text messages, making calls, browsing the web, going on social media, that's all gonna be pretty effortless with this phone. And when you're getting into stuff like photo and video editing, as long as those videos aren't super large files, and some light gaming, stuff that doesn't have really complex graphics and all of that, then you should be pretty good. And 4 gigabytes of RAM is a pretty decent amount too. Now for the battery, this phone actually has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery that supports 20-watt fast charging. Now I didn't even know they put 6,000 milliamp hour batteries in smartphones. The biggest I'd seen until recently is 5,000. So this phone's battery is really impressive. Just about the biggest battery I've seen yet in a smartphone. So you're gonna get not only more life per charge than all the other phones out there, but also more longevity down the road. In comparison, this phone has more than double the battery size of the iPhone 12, which has a 2,815 milliamp hour battery. So by the time a phone like an iPhone has a battery that's worn out, it needs to be replaced, this phone's probably gonna be barely even halfway through its life. So if you prefer to get a phone and keep it for a really long time without having to worry about replacing it, then a phone like this with such a large battery is gonna come in handy for you. And not only does it have a big battery, but this battery supports fast charging. So if you happen to have a fast charger up to 20 watts, this is gonna be a good advantage for you too, especially if you're more on the go and don't have the time to wait for your phone to charge all the time. This could really make your life easier. Another thing I like about this phone is that it has NFC, which is the technology for Google Pay and other contactless payment services. And although I wouldn't consider this a low-end phone by any means, I have seen a lot of mid-level phones around this price range that don't have NFC. So this is a feature that I really appreciate on this phone. So now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a closer look at the hardware. On the left side of the phone here, we have the slot for the SIM card and micro SD card and a Google Assistant button. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you probably know how I feel about this Google Assistant button. Terrible. I've never seen a Google Assistant button that I like, but I will forgive them for this phone because this phone has so many nice features for what it is that I think I can overlook it. On the right side here, we have our volume keys and our power button. On the top of the phone, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack and the noise canceling microphone. On the bottom here, we have the microphone, a USB-C charging port, and the speaker. On the back here, we have our camera setup and our flash and the fingerprint scanner. Like I mentioned before, the back is made of a harder plastic material that has a really interesting texture to it. And I also noticed that fingerprints don't really show up on it, which is definitely a good thing in my opinion. And combined with the texture and the large display, it just makes it an overall really nice looking phone. Now in conclusion, my final thoughts about the Motorola Moto G9 Power. Now one thing to note, you can get this phone factory unlocked for GSM carriers. If you are in the US, you can technically get it, but it is a phone that's mainly sold internationally. That being said, I think this phone is really good. It has a really nice looking display, even though the display isn't 1080p, which I wish it was. It looks really nice regardless, and the size is great. Having a 6.8-inch display is definitely going to enhance your experience with content consumption like video streaming, and stuff like reading and viewing photos is going to be really good too. The phone has a really nice design, even though it is a little bit on the larger side. I wouldn't say it's too big, and the materials are high quality enough to the point where it doesn't feel cheap at all. Aside from that, this phone has a really impressive amount of storage with micro SD card expansion on the off chance that you actually do end up needing more. The performance is not bad. I wouldn't say it's super high performance. I'm not particularly impressed with the processing power, but it's not bad by any means. You're still going to be able to do all your basic activities with no problems at all. And then stuff that's a little bit more intense like light gaming, photo and video editing and that sort of thing, you should be able to get by with relative ease. And then the battery, that's the one feature that really impresses me more than anything else about this phone. I didn't even know there was such thing as a 6,000 milliamp hour battery in smartphones, and it supports 20-watt fast charging, which is on the higher side. And to top it all off, it has NFC. So honestly, I am really impressed with this phone. If you are looking for a device that can handle not only your basic activities, but a little more too, you want to use a contactless payment service like Google Pay, and you want to be able to take really good pictures for something like social media, then I definitely think the Motorola Moto G9 Power is worth looking into. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.